Stay standing as we sing the national anthem.
Thank you. Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, welcome to our forum, and I thank you for your patriotism tonight. The order of our forum is that now we're going to bring in our invited candidates for the county commissioner offices. We sent invitations out to all of our candidates, and tonight we have with us Mr. James Booth. Jim, if you can find your seat. And then after that, we will have our State House candidates. Tell me when you're ready, Jim. First question. Jim, a topic which receives much attention and discussion these days is that of transportation. We are frequently hearing about the Duluth streets, and if you have driven on many of them, you understand the reasons. What do you propose to solve the road conditions in Duluth?
Well, thank you for the question. The roads in Duluth are really a county issue. We have about 8 roads in Duluth that are county roads. The rest of them are city, state roads. The ones that are the county roads, 2014, they passed a 0.5% sales tax in the county, and that goes specifically to the roads. And so some of the roads are Arlington Avenue. You know that one's been done. Part of it is Arrowhead Road. Part of that was done. They're working on the Anderson Road was another one. They're working on the county roads that are inside the city. This is similar to one of the questions that we received during the News Tribune. And what I mentioned there is most of the funds are raised in the city. But most of the funds are spent in the greater county because there's something like 3,000 miles of roads in the county, and there's 600 bridges in the county. And out of those 3,000 miles of roads, about 1,500 of those roads are dirt roads and need to be graded. So a lot of the money that we raise with that 0.5% sales tax in Duluth goes to take care of the roads in the greater St. Louis County.
The question we have for you has to do with healthcare and other issues. Jim, many people are homeless because they have mental health and or drug addiction issues. This population of people are often released from incarceration or treatment facilities with nowhere to go, no guidance, and no medical care. They are often seen in emergency rooms for treatment of minor medical or mental health issues because they lack access to regular primary care. The costs involved are enormous. Would you support the creation of transitional housing facilities with the purpose of assisting people in these situations to learn life skills, receive medical care and employment training with a goal of living independently? Similar to the concept of work farms, where people are accountable for their own progress and active participation in the program is mandatory in order to receive services.
Well, in St. Louis County, we have some of those programs going on as we speak. We have what's called we have what's called IRFs. They're intensive residential treatment service centers. We have a couple of them in Duluth where the people who have mental health conditions can go and get the services that they need and stay there and to work with their mental illnesses. We have the Clear Path Center down in Duluth for opioid abuse, where they can go and get treatment to get out their opioid addiction. We do need more centers. We do need more services. That's one of the things the county does do. And one of the big things the county is involved in is the opioid addiction problem that we have. I don't know if you know, but in 2015, per capita, we had more opioid deaths in St. Louis County than in any other county in the state of Minnesota. That's unacceptable. And so we have a good team working together, an ORS team that is working to help with the addiction part of the opioid problem. What we need is more prevention. We need more education. We don't have the prevention that you see for quitting smoking or the DARE program or things like that. We also need to get enough funding so that police officers, the sheriff's department can do their jobs. And those are a few things that we can do to help that issue.
Thanks, Jim. The next question we have for you has to do with business in Duluth. We have heard some business owners in Duluth say that Duluth has an unfriendly business climate. How do you see the county board working to help business growth in Duluth?
Again, I don't know where to begin with that question. The county board can help work with businesses to a point, but inside the city of Duluth, the statutes and the regulations are passed by our city council. The best thing we can do as St. Louis County residents is run people for the city council who can get on that board and change the flavor of that board. We have an organization today called Duluth BizPac who is trying to do that. If you know of anybody who would like to run for the board, that's the only way we're going to change this ship, and it's going to be a slow turn, but we have to start running people, and we have to get people who have a difference of opinion than what we have on the board now. The county can work with, Cirrus Aircraft, the county can work with AAR, the county can work with the medical facilities, the mining and the timber and things like that. But inside the city of Duluth, that's your city council and your mayor, and we have to work with what we are given, and so we have to run people and get them elected, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of money. So that's the way that I see that we can change that.
Thank you, Jim. Next question is Jim. In your opinion, what are the most important challenges facing our region, and how do you propose to address those challenges? Specifically, what should the St. Louis County Board's top 3 priorities be in setting a sound budget?
Well, first off, in 2016, the budget, the levy was 0, and we had Commissioner Stauber as the board chair that year. The next year, in 2017, the levy was set at 8.5%. That's the highest levy that was set in the last 10 years that I researched. And that year, Commissioner Jewell was the president of the council. What we have to do is we have to look at our priorities and deal with our needs and not our wants. As a government board, I think that it's really easy to go to the people and keep taxing the people. But in 2017, Social Security benefit went up 0.3%. And yet the levy for the county went up 8.5%. And that's only the county. That's not the city. And that's not the school board. And that's not Minnesota Power raising their rates a third. And that's not, Comfort Systems raising their rates. Yet we ask the people who, everybody says we're working for the little people. Well, we ask those little people to keep spending more and more of their money because we have our wants, and we need our wants. We need to have trails, and we need to have parks for ice climbing. We can't be doing the wants. We have to be doing the needs. And what do I think are the 3 priorities for the boards? We have mental health and opioids. That's got to be like number 1. We have our roads, because St. Louis County is the largest county east of the Mississippi River. And we have to get our sheriff's departments and our jailers to have the amount of funding that they need to do what they need to do. Those are our needs, not our wants.
Thanks, Jim. Our next question has to do with immigration. Some in Minnesota are calling for sanctuary status. What is a sanctuary city or county, and should they continue to receive federal grant dollars? Second part of the question would be, why has illegal immigration increased so much in the last decade, and what is the solution?
Well, again, some of this we're talking about isn't so much a county issue as it is a state issue. And as I look out in the audience, you probably know that one of the people that are running for governor at this time wants to have a sanctuary state. Sanctuary state is someplace where people can come, and ICE is not allowed to do any law enforcement with those people. I don't believe in a sanctuary city. I don't believe in a sanctuary state. If you ask most immigrants, they don't believe in a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state. Most legal immigrants have worked their butt off to get into this country the right way, and to have people come in illegally is just, they're not in favor of it either. And why has illegal immigration increased so much in the last decade? I think has to do with the leadership of the country. It was the leadership of the country in the last, not this administration, so not so much in the last year and a half, but the 8 years prior to that, that encouraged illegal immigration. And I think that it's continuing. I think that we have to, again, as a conservative, I have to stand my ground and be vocal and stand up against illegal immigration. Nobody wants to stop immigration. What we want to stop is illegal immigration. Legal immigration, that's how we all got here, unless you're Native American. I mean, that's how we all got here. Somebody had to immigrate from someplace, right? But we did it all the right way, and I think that's what we have to do.
Thanks, Jim. That is all of our questions for you tonight. We have our State House candidates come to the table. Starting at this end of the table, could each of you introduce yourself and give us a brief introduction?
Hi, my name is Donna Kiloborski, and I'm running for the Minnesota House 7A. I lived in Duluth for 10 years, moved here to raise the family. Originally, I'm from Ukraine. I moved to the United States 25 years ago, in 1992. And I'm actually pretty honored to be running and hopefully representing my district.
Thank you, Donna.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the 710 Club for putting this on tonight. My name is Keith McDonald. I'm running in House District 3B. I'm a lifelong resident of the Twin Ports. Grew up in Hermantown. Lived in Duluth for about 10 years. Used to own a home in Duluth. Graduated from UMD in 1985 with a degree in Business Administration. Shortly after that, had an opportunity to start an insurance agency with Farmers Insurance. And I've been doing that for about 30 years now. And during the course of that, I had an opportunity to join the Chamber of Commerce and eventually got elected to the Board of Directors there, and eventually got appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission in Hermantown as well. And that helped prepare me to run for mayor of Hermantown in 2003, and I won that election and served as mayor from 2004 to 2008. It was a good time to be mayor in Hermantown. We were seeing a lot of growth at that time. We managed the growth very well, I thought, both in our residential housing sector and in the retail sector. We also managed to complete a couple of major infrastructure projects while I was mayor. Fourth phase of our main sewer trunk line and the new city administrative building. So I felt that I had an excellent term in office, and we did a good job of keeping property taxes down at the same time. Thank you.
Caroline?
Hi, I'm Caroline Burley, and I'm running for 7B.
which is the part of Duluth west of Lake Avenue and south of Maple Grove Road. I'm running because I think conservatives should have a voice in Duluth and Greater Minnesota. I intend to represent all people in my district, not just those of my party. My campaign slogan is faith, family, freedom. My father worked as a logger, a farmer, a county highway department worker. He also worked in the paper mill in International Falls. Later in life, he was county assessor, justice of the peace, and he served 3 terms as county commissioner for Coochin County. After I graduated from Little Fork Big Falls High School with honors, I attended Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota for 2 years as a math major. I then moved to Minneapolis, where I met my husband, and we married when I was 21. I worked for a life insurance company, 2 life insurance companies actually, in the IT department, which is programming, systems analyst is what I did, working on the computer software for the company. I completed both the FLMI and CLU courses of study. My education led to a membership and an officer of the Minneapolis branch of AAUW and Minneapolis Business and Professional Women.
Thank you, Carol. Our first question for each of you. We'll start at this end of the table, and then each of you could answer the same question. There is concern about the cost associated with the Northern Light Express project. We had such a service many years ago, and it was not successful financially and was discontinued. Should Duluth put more money into this NLX project? And if yes, what is there about this plan that would make it financially feasible? Donna?
Well, the fiscal responsibility is the main focus of my campaign. And I think the previous speaker, Jim Booth, made a really good point that we need to prioritize. And the priorities, I believe, are in the infrastructure, in roads, in the fire department, and the police department.
Thank you, Keith. When I'd been mayor, I served on the MIC committee, the Metropolitan Interstate Committee. They oversee transportation funding for the Twin Ports area. And they'd come and did a presentation for us on this project at that time. And I guess they're obviously still looking for funding on this. And after hearing the presentation, I think that the main problem with the project is that the train would just not go at a high enough speed to make it really viable for most people to want to ride the train. I mean, you could virtually drive down there in the same amount of time that you would taking the train. If it was more of a high-speed train, it was maybe going, 120 miles an hour, and you could be down there at a much faster rate, I think there'd be more interest in people riding it and going down there to go to special, events, concerts, sporting events, those type of things. But from what I saw from the study, the speed of the train would not be sufficient to really make it a viable, business venture. So I do think that just as it did in the past, it would lose money, now if they did it now. Part of the problem was that the tracks that they'd be running it on they could not handle a faster train, so they'd have to redo the tracks, which would push the cost of the whole project, way through the roof and make it really not viable.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Carolyn, what do you think?
I think this project is not financially feasible and is not the highest priority for what we need in our area. Especially when it didn't work before, I think it would be less likely to work now, and you still have the problem with what transportation do you use at each end of this train track. I think we need to work on our roads and our bridges, the needs like the opiate crisis, the poverty in our city, the need for jobs. I think they are a much higher priority than a light express.
Thank you, Carolyn. We're going to provide this next question to you, and this is the same one that we asked Mr. Booth earlier. It is a bit complicated, lots of numbers, so we're going to give it to you. And as As I read it, you can read it. The 2018 evaluation report from the Office of the Legislative Auditor, State of Minnesota, states that 355,000 people registered to vote on Election Day 2016. 12% of the 2.96 million who voted in the general election that year. 26,000 from that group were marked as challenged on the printed roster. This required them to swear the oath that states that they are in fact who they say and eligible to vote. 612 of those were marked as challenged due to felony convictions. 403 of them completed the oath. Out of that 403, only 16 were proven to have been eligible to vote. 387 could not be verified. But they voted and their votes were counted. Donna.
I think the right to vote is one of the most important rights that in the past people were fighting, dying, the countries were broken off. It's one of those things that you take a pride of being citizen of the country. And it's actually always surprised me when I came to the voting booth that, obviously I have an accent, nobody really tried to ask me for anything more than just confirming my address. I personally a little bit concerned about early votes and how they are not verified so the people can come and vote again on the election day. That seems to me kind of confusing. I'm kind of surprised that nobody really pays attention to that sanctuary right to vote has been taken kind of lightly. I have absolutely, as an immigrant, as a person who came to this, who wasn't born in this country, I take my right to vote very seriously. And I would like to have some sort of little bit more documentation on that. Voting ID. I don't see any problem about getting that. I don't see my rights to be taken away. I can go get one. Why other people have a problem about going and getting voting IDs? That can solve a lot of problems. So I think this issue needs to be definitely looked at because the voting is one of those things that basically decides the fate of our country, the fate of the district, the fate of the city. How much it affects you every day. So yeah, I definitely will support some regulations in the matter.
Thank you, Donna. Mr. McDonald.
Well, I guess what I would say would be this. I would say that, I know in other states you have to register well ahead of, election day, the day that you vote. And I think that, we should incorporate that into Minnesota, where people have to register further ahead than what we require in Minnesota. I know people like down in Missouri that they moved there and they went to vote and they found out they would have to register like 30 days before the election in order to vote in that particular election. So I think that we should take further precautions to make sure that people are voting, should be voting, and are eligible to vote. That's my feelings on it.
Thank you. Carolyn.
I don't think same-day registration is a good idea. I think we absolutely need voter ID. There are very few people object to voter ID. A few do. They make a point of it. Most people just hand over their license.
Thank you, Carolyn. We all know that Minnesota is one of the most highly taxed states in the country. Citizens of Minnesota are hit with the 5th highest tax burden behind New York, Hawaii, Vermont, and Maine. Often when placing a bill before the House for a vote, the original bill has been changed. As the bill is discussed, your colleagues have inserted amendments to the bill so that you are voting on multiple issues in one bill. The question is, if a bill is placed before the House and its original intent is to lower taxes, a benefit to all, but a vote in the affirmative means voting against one of your core values due to an amendment attached to the bill, how do you vote? Donna. This has to do with omnibus bills.
Say it again.
This has to do with omnibus bills, where they lump all kinds of things in together.
I understand the question. Well, I am running on a certain platform, and the way that I see it, if I'm going to put myself out there as a people's representative, and one of my main platforms for running is actually taxes, because I stayed home for the past 3 years. We were one income family, so I do understand what those tax increases means for the families who may not be doing so well. And if that means, then I absolutely will vote to lower the taxes if it benefits my voters, my constituents. That's what I'm there to serve, and I'm going to have their best interest at heart. And that's what I promised to do. That's what I'm going to do.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald.
Well, I know that we do have very high tax rates in Minnesota, both on an individual basis and on a corporate level. And so I am for some reduction in taxes, but if it was something that if I was voting on that, but at the same time it was going to go against one of my core values, I would vote against that bill. If we're talking about it was like a life issue, it had to do with abortion or the Second Amendment or something like that, this is a hypothetical situation, but I would say that I would vote against that bill if it went against my core values.
Thank you. Carol.
I think omnibus bills are wrong, and they greatly add to the cost of government because things get voted in that maybe wouldn't have been if they stood alone. I think each issue needs to stand alone. We need lower taxes in Minnesota, but if something has been attached to that bill that I think is totally wrong, I don't think I could vote for that bill.
Thank you. Our next question for you has to do with health insurance. Everyone talks about the cost of health insurance premiums. Would you be willing to embark on an investigation as to why the cost of health care is so high, and then apply that knowledge to driving it down to a more realistic level with the aim of lowering premiums? Mr. McDonald, let's start with you this time.
Yes, I'd be willing to take a look and investigate as to why healthcare costs are so high in Minnesota, and also why health insurance premiums are so high. I know we traditionally had some of the lowest rates in the country for health insurance, and now since Obamacare, I think we're the 13th highest in the nation as far as health insurance premiums go. So we definitely need to look at how we're going to reduce health insurance costs. I'd be in favor of getting rid of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. I think that it's driven the cost of health insurance much higher. We all know that. When we were looking at the 2016 presidential election, that was a big topic as to the large increases that many states across the country were seeing in health insurance premiums due to Obamacare. And I think what's happened as a result of that, there's less insurance carriers across the country. So fewer insurance carriers is resulting in higher premiums for people. And I think we need to get more companies in the market, and competition will help drive the cost down and increase the product that we're getting. I know Jeff Johnson, who's running for governor, is proposing an interstate network of insurance carriers to increase the competition and thereby reduce the premiums for everyone, and I would be in favor of supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn, could you take this one next?
I take the cost of health insurance premiums very personally. My son worked for a company that had wonderful benefits. He decided he wanted to try another area of work, which he did for a year, but it was with a small employer, and he could not afford the cost of the health insurance premiums with that employer. He has now moved back to his original line of work with a different company, which is also a small employer. And to insure just himself and his wife, it would be $600 a month. That's a pretty big chunk out of not the highest budget in the world. I'm retired, and I pay a certain amount for Medicare. I don't know what that is. Maybe $97, I don't remember. But I also pay for a Medicare SEP, and that's $314 a month. When my husband was alive, it was $600 plus a month to have a Medicare SEP. I know some people think we should have Medicare for everyone, but I think that is unaffordable, and we can't do that. I wish the insurance industry would get together and create a group of all the people who work for small employers that cannot afford health insurance, and maybe they could get a lower premium rate. It makes me wonder, those who get generous benefits through their employer, how much they are paying for their health insurance versus how much the company is paying.
Thank you, Carolyn. Donna?
Well, I believe in capitalism. I think competition is healthy. But I think also providing the favorable conditions in a state for the businesses, for insurance companies to come in and offer their services where they're not going to be overcharged, overtaxed, is one of the best way to get options into the state. The healthcare premiums are really, really high, and the more people have choice, the better. That I believe that will, just like in capitalism, in any market, it will drive the prices down. There has to be, for the small business owners, there has to be an option to get something for their, but once again, we have to create in a state favorable conditions where the companies would want to come in, they would want to do the business in Minnesota, they would want to do business in Duluth. And that's, I think, might be the solution to the problem.
Thank you. Next question has to do with school budget. The Minnesota legislature funded schools in 2017 at $483 million, even higher in 2018. Many schools are still tightening belts. Some school funding on special programs has the wording "may be used" toward this program and not "shall be." Should the wording be changed, and should the legislature base future funding on program compliance? Additionally, with the yearly request of school funding, should the state legislature link the finance decisions to performance and priorities? Mr. McDonald.
Okay, thank you. I would support changing the wording on that to "shall be used" on special programs in regards to school funding. I think it would be a good thing to more clearly define that as to where the money is going to be used, rather than kind of a loose wording. As far as linking funding to performance and priorities, I don't know necessarily that would be something I would support, but possibly something more like they did in Florida. They've incorporated where they grade the schools. The schools get a grade from A to F, depending upon how well they performed throughout the last year with their students. And it seems that is working there. Nobody wants to send their child to a school where the school is getting a D or getting an F, and it's more about the pride of the community. And of course, it affects whether people want to live in the community as far as what the grade of that school is. So there's a lot of incentive to keep the school grade high, as far as, desirability of people wanting to move to that community and remain in that community. That would be something that we could do that wouldn't cost us anything, really not much. I mean, there'd be a little bit of money involved in, the oversight of that and administrating that as well. But, we're throwing quite a bit of money at education right now. I think K through 12 is like 41% of the budget, and college and university level is 7%. So we're close to 50% of the budget is going to education. And so how much money can you really throw at one area of the budget? And now, there's talk of, want to throw more money at early childhood education. So I don't think that we really can afford to do that personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn?
I think our schools are failing our students, and I think if parents really looked into the curriculum that is being taught, they would be horrified. We all need to check out what Common Core is all about. Specifically in Duluth, we have underperforming schools, and they are the schools with the lower income students. Yet our school district has been taking money from the special fund to use to lower class sizes at East High School. And Demfeld was not getting the funding they should. Now, a recent decision by the school board, they were going to give a bigger percentage to Demfeld, but still not what they should be getting if the wording said shall be used for. We've got bigger issues than the budget. We've got really big issues about what is being taught to our students. And it seems to me backwards. I thought schools were to educate students, but in Duluth they seem to think that schools are to provide good salaries and benefits for teachers. I think better salaries and benefits does not make a person a more effective teacher. I think tenure does not provide our students with the best possible teacher they should have.
Thank you. Donna?
Well, this is second, the biggest platform that I am running on is basically education. As some of you may know, I ran for the school board last year in the city of Duluth, and the state of our district and a lot of districts across Minnesota is quite alarming. And most alarming is because the money that the state provides them, there is no control. So like, for example, our school district, we're superintendent and can spend the money without any oversight, and there's nothing state can do about it. So the money basically just dispensed and then spent independently. So actually we do have in the state, last year there was a working program where each school gets a grade, and then the state would provide the help. That was proposed program to change where the schools would be getting basically help that they need if they graded D or like B, and they're not performing up to par. But the main problem in it, I do not believe into the throwing more money into the problem. I believe into the spending taxpayers' money responsibly. And the current proposal to increase by the school district in the upcoming election, but asking for more money from the public, I think it's kind of irresponsible and, tell you the truth, outrageous. Because the district who spends money basically wasting them, we had 30 million of surplus which are gone. Now we are in a huge deficit. Some rumors we don't even know because there's no transparency. The district does not release information. And Art Johnstone can be the first to attest to that. So who's sitting there in the audience. So I think there's got to be transparency and there's got to be accountability by the school districts before we throw more money into the problem. Because schools are our future. The kids and the well-being and education of the kids, what will make Minnesota. That's the future, and that's very, very important.
Our next question is also regarding schools. Mr. McDonald, I'm going to have you start on this one. Most schools are now using Common Core curriculum. Do you believe that Common Core is meeting the educational requirements needed to meet the needs of our workforce so that we can be competitive in a global economy? And if no, what principles would you propose to use to improve our educational system?
Well, my understanding of Common Core is that is administered and required on a federal level throughout the country. And I would be in favor of abandoning Common Core, getting away from that, and then letting each state, more or less govern their own educational processes and oversight of the state versus at a federal level. I know there's been issues with Common Core, and obviously that's why we're talking about it here right now. So I would be in favor of, getting off Common Core and going to some other, oversight, at a state, more at the state level than at a federal level.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Common Core is one of my hot buttons. We need to get rid of it. It is destroying our children. I urge all of you to Google Common Core and find out what's going on in our schools. Parents should be involved in what's going on with their children. What I've learned of Common Core is they are getting less instruction in the basics like math, English, history. And what seems to be important is that our children are taught about all forms of sexuality beginning in kindergarten. That's not what we are sending them to school for. They need to learn the basics. They need to learn the history of our country. They need to learn about our Constitution. They need to be informed voters. That's not happening. Common Core is a destructive, bad educational policy. And we need to do all we can to get it out of all the schools in our country. We are failing so many of our children now. They're not getting the education they need because teachers are not meeting the students where their needs are. They have their rigid ways of doing things. And my sister has a degree in slow learning behavior problem, master's degree. And I don't see that has benefited any of our students since she got that degree many years ago, that we have students that are trained to work with students with special needs, but they're not doing a good job of it. I think it's imperative we get rid of Common Core.
Thank you, Carolyn. Donna?
Well, I strongly believe in education. I also believe that unfortunately the world moves forward. And having received my initial education in a different country, I can tell you that the current system disadvantages our kids K through 12 from the very, very beginning. Because you have to remember, when they're going to go into the college and into the workforce, they have to compete somebody who came from former Soviet Union, from Germany, from China. And their curriculum, I started to get physics from 5th grade. Their education, unfortunately, is the key to the jobs and to be successful out there. And because we disadvantage our kids, because I believe the curriculum needs to be rethought. I do not believe I'm going to encounter the Common Core at the state level. It's a federal issue once again. But we definitely have to put the education of our kids and the future. We all use cars, we all use technology, and unfortunately those jobs, those high-paying jobs, go somewhere else. I would like to see kids who are sitting in my classrooms and at UMD, I would like them to get high-paid jobs. I would like them to lead the technology and lead the modern world. And when they come to the college class and they do not know the basics of their arithmetics, that is kind of alarming, something that they should have learned to school, some math, physics, basics, and that should be pushed onto our kids. And I think a lot of, the more they're talented kids, they can handle it. I think at the school, they're a little bit babying them. And when they go into the real world, they encounter, the real world is not going to wait for us. It's not going to wait for anybody. The technology and the progress and market, it's all moving forward. And I would like the kids in Minnesota, in the state of Minnesota, to be compatible on the global market, on the global economy, and actually be the best for that matter. So I am all for the progress. I'm all for the rethinking the curriculum and actually making it one of the best standards in the States. Why not?
Thank you. That is our forum for tonight. I appreciate that the candidates were able to come out and join us, tell us their thoughts and ideas about everything. If you'd like to learn more about the 710 Club, you can visit our Facebook page at 710 Club. Marcia.
As an elected official for the last 16 years, they are one person. You have to elect more than one person. I'm on a board of 5. I have one voice, and I'm fighting 4 all the time. So they can only be a voice, and they have to get down there to be a voice. But it's interesting how if you keep on with your voice, you do make some changes. I saw that today at the annual meeting for the soil and water. But you have to be strong with your voice and stay on track. And these omnibus bills are illegal in the state of Minnesota. It says that in the Constitution, and both Republicans and Democrats have grown big government over the years because they're voting for these omnibus bills. So their voice has to get where they're going so they can start making the changes in the minds of some of these other people. But they're not going to change everything right away. It's not going to happen. It takes time, but they have to be elected.
710 Club is about to allow conservatives to meet and talk and come up with ideas. And this is our first forum, a little bumpy. Thank the candidates again for their time to come and share your thoughts and ideas. And could we give them a round of applause? That's our program for tonight. I thank you all for coming out in nasty weather and joining us. And hopefully this is going to be a first annual, and that we're going to get bigger and better as we go. Thanks very much.